Capital Queers, Alex Reynolds Mystery. Book 3. Author, Fred Hunter. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York, 1999. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 14. We talked well into the night, and I have to admit that when all was said and done, Mother had led us in coming up with a plan that didn't seem quite so much like one of our usual exercises in lunacy. It was a plan that, if it worked out, might manage to bring the two murderers to justice and bring a satisfactory resolution to the rest of it. The following morning, after enjoying room service in Mother's suite, I was relegated the job of calling Nelson. "Yes," he gave his usual terse greeting. "It's Alex Reynolds." "Yes." "I have something to tell you." He sighed and said, "Yes, I have the diamond." There was a slight pause before he said, "I thought you said you didn't have it." "Well, I do. I didn't when we talked, but I found it." "You found it," he repeated slowly. "You didn't have it, but you found it. In Washington." "That's right." There was a beat, then he said, "Well, fine. Then you should turn it over." "Not so fast," I said. I took a deep breath because this was going to be the difficult part. "We're willing to turn over the diamond, but not unless we can be assured that the man who killed Mason and Ryan will be caught." There was a longer pause this time. Through the phone, I could fairly hear the wheels and gears spinning in Nelson's head. "Why do I have a feeling you're about to make me very unhappy?" "Come on, Larry," I said, using his first name to irritate him. "I know you well enough to know that you're just as interested in justice as we are." "All right," he replied. He still sounded suspicious. I glanced at Mother for encouragement, then said, "Well, so we're willing to turn over the diamond, but only to the murderers." "What?" I'd actually caught him by surprise. "That's right. I know there's no evidence against them, so what I want to do is try to get a confession out of them. And for that, we're going to need your help." There was a beat before Nelson replied. "I would be neglecting my duty if I failed to say at this point that I think you've lost your mind. You have the means to bug me, or wire me, or whatever you guys call it. You can listen in when I turn the diamond over to them, and maybe I can get them to tell me what they told me before, that they killed our friends." "And exactly how do you intend to get them to confess? By asking them politely if they killed your friends?" "By refusing to hand the diamond over until I know. Why should they balk at saying it again? They already said it once." He sighed like a parent who is getting frustrated with trying to reason with a child. "Assuming I was willing to be involved in such a thing, and I'm not admitting for a moment that I am, you'd be taking a ridiculous amount of risk. They're likely to kill you then and there." "They're not stupid," I said. "They'll know that you guys are around somewhere." "Alex." "Look, according to their priest, they're going to kill us anyway. So if they don't do it right away, there's a chance that you'll be able to get them for the murders. If we can't get them this way, then our days are numbered anyway. I'd rather go trying to catch them than just sitting at home and waiting for it to happen." There was a lengthy silence after this, during which I crossed my fingers and hoped that Nelson would actually buy what I was trying to sell him. Peter was sitting in a chair at the desk in Mother's room. Mother sat on the edge of the bed, and both of them were staring at me intently, waiting as anxiously as I was for the answer. "Unless the Montanayans are fools," Nelson said at last, "and you say they're not stupid, they'll know the reason you want to bring these two men out into the open. They'll never fall for it." "They're zealots," I said, using the term that Hamilton had used to explain the behavior of this strange cult. "They may realize what I'm trying to do, but they want the diamond back. They may want it back enough to sacrifice two of their people." There was another long pause, then Nelson said, "What do you hope to get out of this, Alex?" "What do you mean?" "Just what I said." I thought for a few seconds, then said, "Justice. The same thing we've always wanted. For the guys that killed Mason and Ryan to get what's coming to them." "And the diamond?" "I don't care about the diamond," I replied, hoping that I hadn't said it too quickly. Nelson often makes me feel transparent. It's as if he spent so much time figuring out schemes that he's thought of the outcome before you even try it. You would just turn the diamond over after we've apprehended these guys? Of course I would. I don't want to hold on to the damn thing. There was a beat before he said, if I consider doing this, I'll still have to go through proper channels. By all means, I said agreeably. I think Dunn and Hamilton should be in on it. I mean, eventually, the diamond would have to be turned over to them anyway, right? Right. I could swear the tone in Nelson's voice carried a hint of amusement. Let me get back to you. With that, we both hung up. Well, said Peter, I don't know. I was still staring at the phone as if maybe I could get the answer from it. He sounded funny. I don't know. He said he's going to go through proper channels. If I know Larry Nelson, said Mother, he'll make it happen. He'll want these people caught as much as we do. But what did he say about the diamond? Nothing. Mother shook her head slowly. I don't like it. Why would he believe so readily that we turn the diamond over to these people when everything is over? Peter said. Because he knows we've thought it out as well as he has. He knows that if the diamond becomes evidence in a murder case, it will be impounded here, and the Thai government won't get it back for years if they ever do. But Nelson's sharp, I said. If he thinks we're up to something, he'll try to counter it. Not at the cost of losing the murderers, Mother said with more confidence than I felt. For some reason that I'm sure a psychiatrist would have a field day with, the words to I'm a little teapot kept running through my mind as I sat there on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Proper channels had flowed very quickly once it was known that we intended to return the diamond, despite the fact that we would only return it in exchange for the killers of Mason and Ryan. According to Nelson, Dunn and Hamilton had quickly agreed to anything to recover the precious religious icon and put off the possibility of a snafu in trade negotiations. And apparently the Montagnan's priest was more than willing, a little too willing, according to Nelson, to send the wanted minions to retrieve it, provided I was there alone to meet them. The meeting was arranged for midnight at the Lincoln Memorial, chosen because it was well lighted and a public place that hopefully wouldn't have too many visitors at that late hour. Of course, there seemed to be an inordinate amount of people there as I waited, but most of them were government agents, from which agency I do not know. And I had to hand it to them. The agents really didn't look like agents. There was a couple of the bottom step who were taking their undercover roles very seriously and necking as if the man was going off to war tomorrow. Another couple, a little older, stood staring admiringly at the seated figure of Lincoln. Then there was a lone man who leaned against one of the columns and checked his watch repeatedly as if he was waiting for someone. It was very late, and another who just seemed to wander around inside the memorial. I'm a little teapot, short and stout, I sang under my breath. What? Said a voice in my ear. I hadn't realized it when I told Nelson he had the means to wire me that I was being archaic. The little bugs no longer required wires if they ever had. He'd provided me with a tiny microphone, or transmitter, or whatever it was, about the size of a sequin, that was simply tucked in my shirt pocket, and he'd given me an earphone that he swore was small enough that nobody would see it unless they were probing my ear. The voice, Nelson's, had come through that earphone. What? I said. Did you say something? No, I said, blushing even though he couldn't see me. I was just... nothing. Have you seen anything yet? No, nothing. Mother and Peter were waiting with Nelson, Dunn, and Hamilton in a conspicuously inconspicuous van on Constitution Avenue, which made it about 4 blocks, by Chicago standards, away from the memorial. They had come to the site together in the van, and I had come to the memorial separately in a cab to foster the impression that I was traveling alone. It's getting late, he said. I know. We had passed midnight, and it was now about 20 after. What should we do? They're not coming. Shouldn't we give it a little more time? They're not coming, he repeated. I can't believe they just let the diamond go. Neither can I, but they're not coming here. It was like I said. They knew it was a trap. 15 more minutes? There was a pause, and Nelson gave a brief, uncharacteristic sigh and said, Okay. But we needn't have bothered. The next 15 minutes passed with nothing more than a teenage couple rather than worse for alcohol. Stumbling up the steps and plopping down on the floor in front of Lincoln, where they started to make out in earnest. I think it was 15 minutes to the second when Nelson's voice said, That's it, Alex. Let's go. We'll meet you at the hotel. Should I go back with you? No. We'll wait here long enough for you to confirm that you're safely tucked away in a cab, and then we'll meet you back at the hotel. But, Alex, this might have been a test. A test to see if you would follow their instructions. In all probability, they've been watching you ever since you arrived. Now, please go get a taxi. I dug the annoying little receiver out of my ear and dropped it in my pocket. I couldn't understand it. Nelson's idea that this whole thing might have been a test seemed ludicrous to me. After all, if the Montanean priest had figured this was a setup and was willing to sacrifice his 2 assassins to get the diamond back, there certainly was no reason to go through an elaborate test like this. And again, even if the 2 Montanean killers knew we wanted them for murder, they also must have known that we didn't have any proof against them. If they wanted the diamond back and were convinced that we had it, all they had to do was come and pick it up. If they didn't want to be nabbed for murder, they could just keep their mouths shut. I caught a cab on 23rd Street and headed back for the hotel, still going over the whole thing in my mind, but not getting any further along with it than I had before. When I reached the hotel, the van was nowhere in sight, so I figured either they took a more roundabout course to make sure that we weren't seen together, or my cab driver had simply had more luck with traffic than the van had. The door to the cab was popped open by the hotel doorman, another perk of staying in a posh place. As I paid off the cabbie, but when I stepped out of the cab, I froze in place with one foot still on the floor of the cab. What I was facing was not the hotel's genial doorman, but one of the Montanean assassins, the one who had tried to fillet me in our home. Before I could loosen my paralyzed larynx enough to cry out, he said in a low, insistent tone, "Make so much as a noise, and we will end it all here." When he said "we," I realized that his partner had come up behind me. "Now, come the rest of the way out." "That's right. And the length of your life now depends on your convincing everyone that nothing is wrong." From the look in the Montanean's eyes, I could see quite easily that he had absolutely no compunction about stabbing me then and there. I glanced down into the cab and said, "Thank you," and closed the door. "That's right," said the Montanean. "Now the doorman is looking over here. Smile at him. It will assure him that nothing is wrong." I did as I was told, and in a little way for good measure, the doorman shot back a stupid grin, raised his eyebrow, and touched the bill of his cap with his white-gloved fingers. Just my luck, I thought. I'm about to be murdered, and the doorman thinks I'm trying to pick him up. "Now," said the Montanean, "we will go to our car. You will walk there with us, and you will make no trouble. Walk along just as if you're out for an evening stroll with friends. That's it." I did as I was told. The Montanean, who seemed to call all the shots, walked along beside me, very close, while the other walked on my other side, but lagged slightly behind. To the casual viewer, I'm sure he only looked like he was having a little trouble keeping up with us, but the occasional pressure against my back told me that the reason he stayed a step behind was to keep his knife in the area of my left kidney. We rounded the corner of the hotel and continued down the street. At first I thought that the walk seemed to be going on forever, probably because I was scared to death, but after a while I realized that we really were taking quite a long walk. Getting a good distance away from the hotel, they were leading me under some sort of freeway. I hadn't been in the city long enough to know which one, in the direction of the river. "There," said the one at my side, giving a nod toward a black car sitting illegally at the side of the street on the other side of the freeway. For some reason, he felt the need to point out their car to me before we got there. It was probably just a ploy to heighten my terror, and if that was it, it was pretty effective. I could feel my fate falling in on me as we neared the car. It was then that something went through my mind like a dull ache, a talk that I'd heard long ago about what to do when you're attacked. The speaker had said that if your assailant tries to get you into a car, do anything you have to do to get away, because once you're in the car, you're done for. Having that thought come back to me caused my body to tense, which was sensed by the Montanean at my side because he put his hand lightly on the underside of my arm, apparently just wanting to assure me that I shouldn't try anything. The touch was enough to remind me that if I was going to do this, it had to come as big a surprise as possible. I tried to take some deep, relaxing breath as unobtrusively as I could, willing myself to calm down. The only way I could get the upper hand was if they thought I was totally at ease. If I tensed my muscles, they would instantly know what I was going to do. So I breathed some more, trying not to think of what was happening as we came closer and closer to the car. We were only a few feet from it when, with one swift move, I did an abrupt about-face and bolted. They were startled for a moment, then turned and took off after me in the darkness. They weren't very far behind. I found myself hampered almost immediately by the fact that I didn't know the terrain. Instead of going straight back up the street, which I was sure would have gotten me killed before I reached help, because they wouldn't have had any choice but to take me out. I veered left the moment I broke free and ran along under the freeway. I hadn't gotten enough of a lead to get hidden behind one of the freeway supports or anything else, so I just had to keep running. It's something that I'm not particularly good at under normal circumstances, but I did have fear going for me. I didn't think I had any hope of keeping ahead of them for long, but what I was banking on was that I could get help before they got me. As I ran, I yelled into my pocket, "Are you there? Are you still listening? Please, God, Nelson! You've got to be there! They're after me!" If there had been anyone on this godforsaken street at 1 a.m, they would have thought I had the DTs, but I was desperately hoping that the bug in my breast pocket was working and that Nelson could hear me. "I don't know where I am. Jesus, they're chasing me. I'm under some freeway." Of course, I'd taken the earphone out of my ear, so I had no way of knowing if he was responding, and I couldn't spare the time it would take to put it back in. I didn't know whether or not he'd gotten Mother and Peter back to the hotel yet, and I was pretty sure he wouldn't be listening to this damn thing on their way back there. My only chance was that he would go back to listening in on me once they realized I wasn't at the hotel. "Aliens," I said aloud, panting heavily. "How long will it be before they know I'm overdue?" God, the answer in that movie wasn't very promising. I kept running, pushing myself despite the fact that I felt my lungs were going to explode, and searching frantically for some sign to tell me where the hell I was. All I knew was that I was under the freeway. I could see one of the bridges across the Potomac in the near distance and tried to step up the pace to reach it like a manically determined short-distance runner, not even knowing whether or not there was a way to get up on the bridge from where I was. But I thought just maybe there would be some traffic there. I wasn't terribly far from the bridge when I finally saw a street sign, K Street. I cried out and then yelled it 2 or 3 more times. "Under the freeway!" I did my best, but if I was 2 years in a health club away from the lotus position, I was even further from running a marathon with any enthusiasm. And I was no match for 2 men who really, really wanted to kill me. They caught up with me when I was about 100 yards from the bridge. One grabbed me by the collar and pinned his arms around me. The other, the one who seemed to be in charge of carving, stood in front of me, exactly as he had when they'd pinned me at home. I felt as if I'd been running for hours, but my whole abortive escape had probably lasted less than 3 minutes. "I am at the end of my patience," he leered at me, sweat glistening on his almond skin as he extracted the all-too-familiar ceremonial knife from beneath his coat. "I didn't know you had any," I said, attempting bravado. "We'll have the diamond now." He put the tip of the knife under my chin, and I could feel it pricking at my skin as I responded, "Wait, you believe in... part of your religion is Buddhism, isn't it? Don't you believe in peace?" "At any cost," he said with a wicked smile. "Then if I have to die, couldn't you at least let me die in peace?" His smile grew more menacing. "You will die in pieces, Mr. Reynolds." First, please, just to give me peace, I have to know, why did you have to kill Mason?" "Mason?" he replied, raising his eyebrows. "The first time, when you tried to get the doll back?" The Montanean gave a little shrug, apparently seeing no harm in telling me since I wouldn't be around to repeat it. "We waited until he was gone to search his apartment. He came back before we were done. He had to die. We should have waited until we were done searching." "Because you didn't find the diamond?" "It wasn't in the dolls." "But you only smashed half of them," I said. "We knew the type of doll it would be hidden in, not the exact doll." "But why?" I said almost pleadingly. "Why did you have to kill Ryan too?" "He knew where the doll was," the Montanean through clenched teeth. "It wasn't in the doll, so they had to have taken it out. He had to know where it was, but he wouldn't tell us. He died instead." "He died instead," I repeated slowly in my mind. "But for what? Oh, God, why hadn't he just told them where it was?" "So you killed them both," I said. "Yes, and you will be next. Now, we will have the diamond." I stared into his glaring eyes for a moment, then slowly shook my head. "Not for me." "What?" he exclaimed. He pulled back slightly, and his eyebrows went back up. It was the first time he looked surprised. "You were wrong all along," I said, continuing to shake my head. "Because I don't have the diamond. I never had it, and I wouldn't have given it to you if I did." The man who had my arms pinned behind me tightened his grip, and I could feel his hot, heavy breath on the back of my neck. The one in front of me allowed his expression to transform from surprise to absolute fury. He screamed something out in his native tongue, drew back his arm with the curved knife, poised like a viper about to strike, when suddenly a voice rang out. "Hold it, right there. You're covered." Dunn stepped out from behind one of the freeway supports with his gun drawn, and Hamilton came out from the support on our other side. In the distance, I could see a handful of other agents rushing to our assistance. The man in front of me stood with the knife in the air as he slowly turned his head to look at Dunn, then around to look at Hamilton. He then turned to face me, smiled, and with an otherworldly composure, his arm snapped backward, and then he plunged the knife toward my chest. The shot seemed to ring out simultaneously to the man's face contorting. A spasm passed through his body. The swipe with the knife just grazed my shirt as he crumbled to the ground. The man, holding me, released me at the sound of the shot and tried to run away. But by that time, there was nowhere for him to go. We were hemmed in by agents. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.